Koto, and welcome to this morning's extraordinary meeting. We are all present, so there's no apologies. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? None. Move into the report. Item 4.1, the draft annual report for the year ending 30th of June 2024. Over to you, Beth.
Thank you, Tracy. Morena to everybody in the room. So I guess what I can say about the draft annual report that we've got in front of you this morning is that from last week's meeting where we presented the 12-month report, there hasn't been a lot of changes. So the only thing that would have been missing from our 12-month report would have been the depreciation, because the team was still working on the capitalisation of PP&E. So it's been actually a great achievement for the team to be able to capture all that in the draft that you've got in front of you, and we've also managed to include the revaluation of our assets. So that has actually been a big task. So just like to well done too. If I can point you, if we go through, I guess I'll walk you through the draft. I am going to ask Sarah and Raj to just jump on in and bounce off me if if there are any questions that you have along the way that I can't answer that well. So we've pretty much kept to the same format as what we did in last year's annual report. You'll notice this year we've taken a lead out of the current LTP, and we've incorporated Te Reo translation throughout the document, which I think is fantastic. So that's a big ups to Karsten and Steph, who worked with our publisher to get those translations into there. Sarah is going to talk to the room around the service performance measures, but as she mentioned in the 12-month report, which unfortunately isn't in the report that we have drafted up for you this morning, but we have discussed it before. We managed to achieve 63 of our 101 performance indicators, and the highlight, I guess, for this annual report was that Council was also able to achieve 76 of the mandatory DIA measures across transportation and the Three Waters activities. But I will let Sarah talk a bit more about that once we've covered off the rest of the report. Unless it's easier for everybody to have Sarah jump in at the beginning of the report, since the service performance measures are at the front end. It would save you from flicking back and forth, I guess.
I'll take your lead.
That would be helpful, I think, if we're not flicking back and forward.
Morena, Your Worship, and councillors and staff in the room, thank you for that kind intro there, Beth. In the 12-month performance report last week, I think I detailed all of the mandatory measures in quite a bit of detail actually around which ones weren't being met, and gave a little bit of an explanation as to why. Subsequent to that, we are still waiting. Audit have actually asked us a question as of yesterday around the smooth travel exposure for the Wakakatahi, one of our roading measures. So I'm about to go back to our roading network team just to clarify that. But at this stage, I haven't changed any of our service performance measures from what you've got within the draft. I am anticipating making a correction to a couple within the community development and economic development space, where in conversations with Colin found that there was a bit of misalignment with how we were calculating these measures. So I think there's a couple around number of events the Tararua District was present at or promoted, or whatever the measure is, where he has put in for the quarter as opposed to the total for the year. So a couple of those measures will go from not met to met. But when we bring back the final annual report, we'll flag that and give you that full detail as to what has changed. As always with audit, we are anticipating there's always changes that come in, especially in our Three Waters space around a number of calls and things like that. So just anticipating changes, and we'll flag them and signal them within the final annual report. I have also attached to this agenda, which wasn't attached to the 12-month report. We did receive our 12-month benchmarking report from our key research, which has benchmarked us against 18 other councils that partook in the benchmarking exercise. I was going to say activity. That report is attached for your information, but otherwise I'll just open the floor to questions rather than go through.
Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. So can I just clarify then through to you, perhaps Sarah, that the chunks in this draft that has got big to update across it, what those the things that you were talking about that you still got to, because I mean there's some pretty chunky bits there that's got to update across it. So
Sorry, through you, Worship, I'll just jump in on the bits that are within the activities section, because that's where the service performance measures are captured. So the only item within that section was outstanding was the representation, which has subsequently been received. And then also the infographics are still sitting with to update, which now that we are in a place we're comfortable with where we've landed, we'll provide that the update for the version that goes to the auditors. But you're talking about other pieces.
yeah, I'm talking about on page 21, it starts for us, the annual report disclosure statement, which it's got rates, increase, affordability, debt affordability benchmarks, balanced budget benchmark, all of that's got to update. So do we prove that? Because I'm just trying to clarify, is there any point in us making any comment on this particular part of the draft report if it's going to all be updated? Sorry.
I can, through you, your worship, I can talk to that. So at the time of sending this to our publisher last Friday, the team was still, as I had mentioned, the team was still working on the capitalisation process. So until we're confident we're in a position where the numbers have stopped moving, which we are in a position today, we were unable to update our benchmarks, our financial prudence benchmarks, because they different sections of the financial statements feed into those graphs.
The depreciation.
Yeah. So we needed to, rather than do rework, the team made a call to cut off as of close of business, end of play last Thursday, to get this to our publisher in time for the draft, this version of the draft to be presented today. As I mentioned in my opening as well, there is very little change to what was presented in the 12-month report.
Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Councillor Sharon covered my first question. My second question is a bit more of a general question. Obviously, we've got a whole lot of financials within this report. There's references to debtors and to rates receivables. My question is we're obviously going through a direct debit error issue at the moment, and I just wanted to check that those figures have been included in any of the rates receivables.
Through your worship, great question, Councillor Gilmore. I am actually booked time tomorrow morning with Raj to delve into this a little bit deeper, but the figures that are within your debtors, within the debtors note, include everything, include all debtors owing to council. Just done a quick analysis around the rates receivable. From 30 June 24, the gross rates receivable has increased by 688,000 in this current financial year. we have, the only thing that hasn't been processed within the draft that you have, and which is what I'm meeting with Raj tomorrow, is around our doubtful debt. So we are required, we legislated to report on any debt we foresee as doubtful. So we make an adjustment in the annual report for that. Last year it was 285,000, but the direct debit issue, my understanding is that it's all captured within it, and within the spreadsheets where we pull our rating, our aging report includes every single property within it. So it's quite a detailed report which does get provided to our auditors.
Thanks. That gives me some assurance. So thank you, Sarah. I suppose what struck me with this, and I know that the direct debit issue is fairly new for most of us, is whether there actually needs to be some kind of a statement within this document highlighting it, because I'm obviously aware of the issue, but I had to ask the question directly. We speak, and in the report it talks about this being a key community accountability document. I think this is a really important thing we need to make sure we highlight, and we also need to make sure we highlight this to audit, because I'd be very keen to see what their thoughts of it were, particularly because it hasn't been picked up in previous audits. So when we're looking at this being a key accountability document, my personal view is I think we need to actually flag what is a significant error of a discrepancy of quite a large amount of money.
Thank you. 100%. I hear what you're saying and agree with you. We need to have a conversation with our auditors around how and what that looks like. We are legislated with the reporting and how we need to present things. By all means, does that not mean that we can present other information as well? So as part of our work with the auditors, we will look to go, how can we present this? And I will make sure that we add in a disclosure somewhere. And when we do adopt, I'll make sure to highlight this for you, just so that we are being transparent. By no means are we trying to hide anything. We are trying to be transparent, and it's a really great piece of feedback that you've provided us. Around the comment for the balance in the debtors account, the balance, I just need to stress that our rating take is more than $44 million, and a $400,000 balance, if it's remaining current and it's still flowing through the system, it doesn't flag on their radar. I just really wanted to put that in a public forum, that it's less than 1%. So yes, we could have put controls in, we could change things, and we are, but just wanting to make that comment in a public setting.
Thanks, Sarah, because it certainly is something that has been flagged within the public. You know, we do talk about the fact that the books are audited, and that gives residents that confidence. So it has been something that's been asked from me by the.
Could I just make our proposed changes that we're looking to implement as a result of this? We will run this pass audit, we will get their feedback, and we can provide that back to in a public setting again. Maybe we need to report, we can just completely close that loop. Just to make sure that the controls we have in place are controls that audit agree should be in place, and then we can come back and say what we've done.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, Sarah, for that. I appreciate that, absolutely. I think some of that information in a public format, my expectation is that will come from the investigation and the review, and that we are making that public as well at that time. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Gilmore. Thanks, Sarah. Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Tracy. Yeah, just reading through this amazing document on page 24 when I was marking it up. I'm just trying to get my head around that statement there, debt control. 2018-19, 148, benchmark not met, 161 not met, 212 not met, that's 21-20, 2021, and then it gets into 21, 22, etc. You can see that benchmark met. So that's where I was trying to just get my head around all that. And you've probably just justified what you're saying. Can you just explain that graph? I missed something.
Take a stab at some of this. Beth might take a stab and then we might throw Raj under a bus. So this measure, as it says in there, is to council meets the debt control benchmark if its actual or net debt equals or is less than its planned net debt. So what we're saying is that in the years 18, 19, 19, 20, 20, 21, council hasn't met this benchmark. So that means that our net debt has been more than what we had gone out and planned within our long-term plan, our annual plan. So in any given year, there is unforeseen events that occur that impact on it. What this benchmark is trying to do is measure what we planned, what we reported we planned, and then where our actuals have fallen. What it doesn't take into account is things like if we were to pre-fund debt and I don't know what else off the top of my head. It's a really great question. That's all I can probably contribute. Beth has given quite a detail as to why we've not met within those years in the next column.
You wanna?
Thank you, Sarah. I will try my best to build on what Sarah has explained. We actually, Sarah and I had a conversation about the CAPEX program this morning and whether or not to provide an explanation about what is reported in the annual report compared to what is reported in the CAPEX report that comes with the 12-month report. So I guess this is quite timely and good question. So what Sarah has explained is that these are reported against what we had planned initially. And as part of the LTP, we do the annual plan, which then revises that budget. Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong. So the annual plan doesn't take into account any carry forwards or any approved variations to budget, whereas the CAPEX report that Mike presents to you does. So that's why there is quite a, I guess, a discrepancy between the percentages if you look at it in isolation. So if I go back to Mike's CAPEX report that we presented last week, according to his numbers, which include any approved variations and carry forwards, we had completed around about 75% of our CAPEX program. If we go to the funding impact statement, and that, I think I have made a note of that, that is on page 168 of the annual report, and may have had the pages wrong, but the funding impact statement for the whole of council is based on our annual plan. So that is exclusive of any carry forwards and any variations. So when you go off those numbers, what we had spent for the financial year compared to what we had planned initially, we had spent 135% of what we had planned. So that's where I guess we can illustrate where there is a huge difference in the reporting, which then flows into these benchmarks, because these benchmarks are compared to what we had planned as opposed to a revised budget. Does that make sense? I don't know if Raj can offer any further
Information to that?
Your worship, good afternoon, councillors. You answered really well, and I think in the nutshell is it's the control. Like most benchmarks, is just a flag to us and to the governance and to the community. What did we actually spend? How much did we actually borrow compared to what was the plan? And I think it's for us to disclose here, and I think we've done in the previous years very clearly if we have gone beyond the plan or set under the plan, what was the reasons, and Beth explained it's mainly driven by variations that we do during the year, which is not reflected in the plan that was adopted 12 months ago.
Thank you. But councillor Wallace.
My lens is getting clearer. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll just carry on with the rest of this report. So we'll skip a few pages to the Sarah's presented the service performance measures and everybody's happy with that. So we'll go to I guess what you're all interested in, which is the financial statement section of the annual report. So let me find that and guide you to where the first page is that I will be talking to.
On 185.
161 of your agenda. So this is our statement of comprehensive revenue and expenditure for the year. As we had reported in our 12-month report, we showed a favourable variance to budget, and the reasoning for that hasn't changed when it's flown into our annual report. So we'd planned to be in a deficit of 1.2 million, but obviously due to the cyclone events and all the other unplanned events that had happened, we received some unbudgeted funding, which is then fed into what our year-end result is, which is $10.9 million. So most of that spending, and you'll see it on the lines, is our grants and subsidies that have been unplanned for, as well as our operating expenses on that same page that were also unplanned. So they all have a correlation with each other. Although the statement looks like we've done really well and hey, we might have 10.9 million cash in the bank, we actually don't. So this needs to be read in conjunction with another statement, which unfortunately, same reasoning as our benchmarks. We were unable to have it prepared for this draft version, which is the statement of cash flows. So that there would detail the money coming into council and how it was spent and what our cash in the bank at the end of the year is. So you'll see from that statement on page 165 of the agenda, we've got nothing in the current year, but that's because we needed to start wait for the numbers to stop moving because everything feeds into this. But what I can tell you that is that at the end of the year, we had cash and equivalents of $3.2 million. So you can see that the difference between the 10.9 million, which is reflected in the statement of income and expenditure, compared to what is in our cash flow statement, that there will also be reflective, the direct decrease in the cash will be reflective of any money spent in the CapEx space that aren't shown on the statement of income and expenditure. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm happy to take questions as I go through each page of the financial statements. Otherwise, I'll just carry on. So,
Going back to Sharon's question, and when I was going through this update stuff, there's a lot of update pages in this document, and I know you covered on it, but we're going to move this. How can we move something that's doesn't exist? It's not updated. We've got to work in the now, because you could change something drastically and.
Through your worship, the purpose of today is to present you with a complete draft, as complete as we can make it, in time for the agenda before it goes to the auditors for auditing. We're not asking you to approve this report as complete. We're asking you to just review it, understand it, have it presented to you. So when we do come back with a final, you know what you're sort of in for. And then when we do the final, we will present any changes that have occurred in detail. This is probably a step that we've historically, just with timing and things like that over the last couple of years, haven't done, and it is good practice for us to do so, which is why we're trying to bring it back. Understand the comment around things to be updated. Things that are to be updated aren't material to the document and the contents within it. The accounting policies, for instance, I know that's showing is to be updated. That's not likely to change. It's likely to be a couple of words here or there. The benchmarks is probably the key piece that you're looking for, and the cash flows, as Beth has mentioned. But again, they're not materially going to change what you already have in front of you.
Yeah, supplementary, that's what I mean, because you look at 175, it's different pages, and I'm trying to figure out on that page what you change. I get what you're saying, but I'm thinking, well, I don't know any different. So I'm trying to think, if there was a figure, that's fine, you can figure that out. As you said, you haven't got all the figures in. But yeah, I was just trying to figure out in the word sense, like there's about 3 or 4 more. I won't name them all, but yeah, that's where I was getting hung up on.
Just there is no, they are policies that we as a finance team will look to update and amend based off whatever recommendations our auditors sort of provide. But from my understanding, having gone through them, there isn't any changes. We have done this exercise within the long-term plan. So what you'll find is most of the accounting policies that are disclosed in the long-term plan will mirror, if not be identical to what comes in here. But noting your comment, and we will make sure that any changes we do specifically highlight for you, because it is words and it is, it's not easily identifiable what's changed. So we take on board your feedback.
So the next statement that I will cover off after the statement of revenue and expenditure is, I will take you down, we might skip the equity. I'll cover off the financial position on page 163 of the agenda. So not much here. I guess I've already mentioned about what our cash position was at the end of the year. This financial, the balance sheet here, financial position incorporates our property, plant and equipment, our capitalisation and our valuation on those assets. As I'd mentioned before, the team was still working on finalising this at the time of printing because a few anomalies have popped up in the QA process. So we wanted to rectify that. So the numbers have changed a little bit, but again, they're quite minor.
I'll just cover that off. With regards to the PP&E, as you know, our infrastructure revaluation is a gift every year. As part of that exercise, we have undertaken quite a detailed assessment internally ourselves and with our external valuer as well. We weren't satisfied with what went into the report, which is why it was delayed making it into the full council meeting. We have done a subsequent QA as of Monday, and there has been a minor shift from what is showing within this. The revaluation has increased from, I think it was showing as 8 million, it is now 10 million. So just a minor, in a context of a 100 and something $1 million portfolio, it's not much of a change, but just a slight increase.
Thank you, Sarah. The balance sheet also incorporates any of our year-end accounting journals that we've done as part of the annual report. Our borrowings haven't changed from what we had reported on at the 12-month report, although I do note on this copy of the annual report on page 164 of the agenda, the borrowings, the non-current portion, has been recorded incorrectly, and that includes the fair value adjustment on our interest rate swaps. So those have, in the version that will be going to audit, those have been separated out, and our borrowings are showing as 57 million, with the fair value adjustments on our interest rate derivatives being reflected in both the asset and liability portion of the spreadsheet.
No change to the figure.
No change to the figure. So the figures presented on this balance sheet that go to the auditors won't change. What I would like to expand on our borrowing. So all the financial statements and the reports throughout the annual report all tie in together. So as we were talking about the benchmarks before, how it was what we were planned versus what the revised budget was, if we link that also to our, I guess, our major capital projects summary on page 30, I think I've noted down on the report, which lists all of the projects against the activities. You'll see there was a variation for $7 million outside of what was planned. That then flows into why our borrowings are higher at year end compared to what we had budgeted. Also, within that figure, we've got repayments and pre-funding that come into play as well. So I guess if you're wondering why our debt has increased, that'll be why, because we had unplanned work that we had been approved throughout the year. What else do I want to mention around the borrowings? Oh, and I think that's all about the borrowings, but this, the financial position also flows into the cash flow statement, which again, unfortunately doesn't have the figures. But with our working capital, that gives an indication of how healthy council's funds, I guess liquidity is, cash is. And that is based on our current assets less our current liabilities. If you look at this, we end up with a negative working capital. I worked it out to be about $1.6 million. However, although sometimes it's bad, it depends. You need to look at this situation as a whole, and it's pretty much a balancing act of how funds are allocated. So at year end, we had quite a bit more money invested in term deposit. However, 18th, I think it was the 18th of July, the following month, we had $2.7 million of term deposit mature. So that goes into our cash. So then that then is reflected in our net overall working capital. So it brings it up from a deficit of 1.6 to then we're in the black. We're 1 million in the black. So just something to consider when you're looking at the financial statements.
On a roll.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. And it's, I was going to bring it up later because I've got a number of questions around in the notes to the financial statements, but the fact that you're talking about cash here, Beth, if you looked at page 185 for us, the cash and cash equivalents, and if I was a ratepayer and got really excited and got through to page 185, and I looked at, you know, I mean, those of us who've run businesses, cash is king. So I'd be looking at those two columns, the actual for 23-24 and the actual for 22-23. How would you explain the fact that in this most recent year we've had 3,210 versus 6,982? I mean, that's a huge difference, isn't it, in terms of cash and cash equivalents? So if I was sitting here with my accountant husband, he'd be going, oh, what happened between these 2 years when it comes to cash? I mean, you've reflected that we're still in a fairly good position, but those two columns just stuck out to me and went, where did we lose that much cash in these 2 years?
Right, through you, Your Worship. I believe that we might have discussed this last week at the 12-month report. So it's no, don't be sorry. So it's always good to revisit these so that you know, it's cemented in our thinking, I guess, and understanding of the reports moving forward. So the reason why our cash was a lot higher in the 2023 financial year was due to the timing of when money was invested on term deposit. So this note 1, needs to be read in conjunction with note 16, which is our other financial assets. And within that, you'll see our term investments. Page 199, I think it's about $8.7 million that we've got on term deposit for the 2024 financial year. I'll just quickly scroll down to it. But I think when we did a comparison year on year of our cash position, which is cash on hand in the bank, combined with our cash that is invested, we were pretty much on par with the amount of cash that we held. It was just spread out in different buckets. So this year, we've been able to get our timing right and invest money before year end, whereas last year that timing was wrong, so we invested it after balance date. So that's why it's reflected a bit differently in the annual report. That, do you
No, that's fine for that. I've got a couple of other questions, but I'll wait till you get to that. Oh, oh, I don't want to be the only one asking anything, but, which section was it? I've looked at the section 9 of the financial statements, page 191, employee entitlements, reflected on our annual leave is all creeping up, isn't it? Even though I'm aware that we're supposed to have strategies in place to manage that liability, just a comment really, I guess. And then can I take you to section 10 of that under other operating expenses? Then you put, oh, hang on. Tracy. Can you explain to me in the 23-24 year column, we have 465, and I don't even want to think how many thousands, 465,000 to Audit New Zealand for financial statement audit compared to 173,000 the year before. And I guess I've written a big question here, value for money. What's the difference between those 2 years? Because the audit fee for our LTP is separated out. There's a bit of shaking heads going on here. So why the huge increase for
Raj wanted to throw Sarah under the bus, but I have a little bit of background from this, and I will ask Sarah just to jump in and just to make sure that the information that I'm giving you is correct. But I recall maybe towards the end of last year, was it Raj? There was a fee proposal increase from Audit New Zealand. And within that fee proposal increase, they were trying to, I think there was, within their proposal, there was recovery portion line within proposal to recoup some costs from previous years. And that also, as a result of, I could be wrong on that, but I will double check. And then since COVID, they hadn't, I guess, they hadn't yet adjusted their fee. So this is catch up.
yeah, pretty significant proportion, Mia Tracy, one would think of our.
And that's where, when you talk about value for money, that's one of the conversations that I continue to have with Audit New Zealand. And I guess that's where members of the public are coming forward and saying, you know, Audit New Zealand are auditing our books and that costs us a lot of money, and, you know, they've missed things. What else is there? And they need to get that confidence back as well. The other part to that is that the chair of audit and risk is also, I've raised that with him, and he's having a look at, you know, what processes, you know, could be better. And I know there's been some challenge with the number of staff and new staff and costs like that. So very much having a look at all of that at the moment.
Through your worship, Raj has just made a fair comment that I was thinking myself. Within that 465K, I think with the delay that occurred with our 23 annual report, that will be time lag within when the invoices are actually received. I would like to go away and come back to you on this with a more concrete figure. Just that I'm comfortable. It will be fine, but I just would like to, for my own benefit, come back to you with a bit more detailed breakdown, and if that's okay.
It just sticks out from the communities to get on and go.
But Raj and I have not had the recovery conversation with our auditors, so let me come back to you on that if that's okay.
I think just to build public confidence back up, we do need to see that. Thanks, Sarah.
It's coming up.
Other questions? Those are the two main statements that I wanted to speak to within the financial statements, which is the income statement and the financial position. Do we have any other questions in respect to the notes that are throughout the financial report?
Councillor Wards.
I can't find it at the moment, but I remember it's not under employee entitlements, but I remember the breakdown of payments to mayor, councillor and community board members. Can you explain the variation with the community board members? I mean, there was a couple of them that I know are the chairs, so I expected they'd be, but there was variations between some of the members that I couldn't find a reason for. So how are how's their remuneration calculated? Is it it's not per meeting, is it? There's a breakdown of all the members, past and present. Sorry, I can't find it on the 90. Yeah, sorry, I just
That's just a typo to an Ernie's name.
yeah, I was going to yeah.
Ernest.
Yeah, so on the left-hand side on that little table,
Because their remuneration is set.
that's what I thought. But I mean, you've got variations from the chairs at 13 and 8. Those are the two chairs. And then you've got members' rates are, yeah. So you've got a 7. I'm just saying the Dannyvert Community Board. You've got a 7, a 6, a 6. But how do you get a 7 versus a 6?
Because it's in thousands of dollars, it's likely to be just teetering on. So one might be 6,499 and one might be 6,501. Like it might just be a little thing, in which case it rounds up once it hits over 500 to 8 or to 7, as opposed to rounding down to 6. But like Ali has said, we'll come back to you just to make sure that it's correct and that there is a typo, but make sure that I haven't got any other typos within that.
Well, is that the name above the one that Ellie spotted is also spelled wrong? Yeah.
There's a couple there.
Yeah. 3 lines. Am
But yes,
It's the I have.
No, they've got the eyes on the wrong place.
On the time, no,
It's my sister.
so, all members of the community board, like all of Dannyvert community board members, should be exactly the same. They don't get any other payments.
No.
So Ernie and Terry should be exactly the same. I'll check whether there's any. Because we also had some members were previously community board members, so previous financial year carries across the triennium, so there can be something that we can look into that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know. No, we will confirm. Thank you. Great questions. You don't pick it up, audit will, so thank you.
Oh, your charge out rate's much more reasonable. Thank you, Councillor Wards. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you. Because last year I was studying last year's annual report and they had a different bandwidth. So on your yeah, this is actually salary stuff prior to the year before. So it's this. I haven't got the other one in front of me at the moment. So these are what they're sitting at the present time.
Through you, your worship, the employee remuneration band, which is on page 191, which is the section you're referring to. Within the 23 annual report, we're legislated, we have to have a minimum of 6 employees within any one band. So within the 22 year, our bands were slightly different to what we did in the 23-year band. The 24 and 23-year bands are now the same. They should be the same. We just haven't updated that. I'm pointing like you can see my screen, I'm sorry. The 23 should reflect to say 24. But their bands are correct and there is no.
Could I, the bandwidth is really quite scary in that last bandwidth, isn't it? If you make that as a percentage, crikey.
The bandwidth is, there is only one outlier within what was our previous bandwidth. But because we are required to have 6, a minimum of 6 in any one band, we had to extend that band to that size.
Oh, so not necessarily.
It's not.
I gather that, but that seems like
It's
it would be more comforting if we had it the other way around.
If I was able to, we can't, for legislative purposes, we're not allowed to report any more than a minimum of 6 within any one band. But the band needs to be, so if, say that 142, that you're talking about the last band, which is your, it's just, yeah. So there's only one employee that would be outside of that band. That one employee is disclosed separately within this document because we are legislated required to report that one employee separately. However, the legislation around the bandwidth is there needs to be a minimum of 6, so it's not easily identifiable to any one person. However, I take on board what you're saying. It makes no sense when that one employee is separated out as well.
I'm actually not talking about that one employee. I'm talking about the width, the percentage width between those two figures. It's huge.
Is because of the one employee. So I can't have that one employee in a bandwidth on their own because I have to have a minimum of 6. I understand what you're asking.
Because if you look at the bandwidth above it,
It's
it's a different percentage.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why.
Band is prescribed.
It's prescribed in the act. That's better than legislated. It's prescribed. in
The act was coming to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
I go councillor Chase and councillor Gilmore.
thanks.
How I got that was that possibly 5 of the 6 are on just over 140 and maybe one is near close to the other end. Is that correct? Thank you.
But that's the question we don't know.
You go back to the previous page where it has the chief executive,
Oh, yeah, that,
that will indicate to you.
that's one. That's fine. That's the other 6.
5.
5.
Councillor Gilmore.
And thanks very much, Your Worship. Just a question when we were looking at the staff numbers, I was just a little bit confused because right at the very front of the the document, so page 14 on our papers, it states that council has 144 permanently employed staff members. Page 91, it has 108. Can I just double check that on page 11, that's just total head count, and then when we have a look at 191, that's full-time equivalents?
Thanks, councillor Gilmore. For that.
Other questions, comments around the notes to the financial statements?
Tracy, I just missed that. I was in Scott's court there too. I was looking at the 144. And then I had some notes here about page 19, 91, which came to 90 plus 5 casuals. So that I was just, you might have explained it then, my head was not quite there. So the 144 to the 90 difference?
The note within page 191 is converted to full-time equivalents. The page something at the start is head count. The casual staff needs to be disclosed separately, and they are staff that are available should they need to be called upon, which is why they're not counted within the head count, within the FTE count, sorry.
That help, Councillor Sutherland? I did query this myself, so, because when you look at the 144, I was just like,
This is 75, 15, that's 90. Full-time equivalent. Alan dates, like, isn't it telling me there we've got 90 full-time equivalent employees?
Yes.
So the 144.
Head count. They're not necessarily full-time equivalent.
That's his 12 casual staff.
They're not included within the, so within the 95, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but within the 95 and the 15.4, I can come back to you with how many of the actual physical counters, which is what's disclosed in the front end of the annual report, as opposed to I've converted them, we have to convert them to full-time equivalent. So say I work 20 hours a week, I'm half an FTE. Which
that 144 is not doing us any favours.
no, but also this report is as of the 30th of June. So on the 30th of June, specifically, this is what we have to disclose. But we can do come back to just to re-cement to make sure that what we've disclosed in both sections are the one and the same.
I'm just thinking to the public, they open that, we've got 144 people work for the council. End of story, isn't it? That's. Yeah.
Say part-time.
So that's the 108.
Full-time.
Full-time equivalent, so it's converted to working 40-hour week.
I think it's you can, because I've queried it as well. If we can just have something that comes back that is really, I guess, clarifying it for the public, just how many full-time we have, how many part-time, what that might look like. Because initially when you do see it, that's the first figure you see is the 144, as opposed to diving into it. I think that would be helpful. Because I certainly looked at the 144 and thought where did that come from?
Yeah. This is the pay side of it, Ben, but like you reduced that figure you're talking about, you reduced 20. That looks good. That looks like, that is the way I think you're trying to get it across. So that type is what the people want to see, like it's this perceptional thing. To me, I look at that and think 20 gone. No, well, that's a fact. And that's what we've got to do. And you guys are working really hard. And because obviously there was 20 not needed, or there was 20 that we've cut and we're making everyone work harder, which I think it's the latter. So great work.
Don't think it quite reads like that. And when we're looking at making cuts largely to level as a service, there's certainly not 20 less. Yeah, but Sarah will come back with that exact breakdown, so we can go out with that crystal clear, and everybody understands exactly how many staff are here. And of course, we've also got, I guess, with a Sarah, Councillor Wards.
But it's towards the end, me, Tracy, but I always look at a page like 240, 248 on our iPads, but it's 245 in your report there, Beth and Sarah and Raj, the statement of financial position. And if you look at the assets notes, you look at the liabilities, and you look at the equity, some are up, some are down. I guess what I'm trying to get an overall sense from from our officers here. Are we in good shape? Because, you know, I've focused on the liabilities comments there, that our borrowings are lower than budgeted, our employee benefits are higher than budgeted. We've got 7.9 million ahead of budget in our deferred, you know, payments. In the equity though, this is where I got focused on. The accumulated funds are 33.5 million lower than what we budgeted. Our reserves are higher by 62, which is great, because that means we're not in a bad state, really, are we? Is this? I'm trying to get a sense, without all the figures and without, are we making progress in terms of the books? You know, are we? Because if you sat down, you did your arrows in both directions, have we come out, as you've said in the financial statements, better or worse than we did last year? Just big picture, Beth. Come on, take a punt.
Shut up. This is me taking a punt. So I guess big picture, if we're just going to look at the financial position, our liabilities are less than what our assets are. So keeping it simple, as long as our liabilities are less than our total assets, we're in a good position. We've got a healthy balance sheet. Is there anything else that you would like to add? So that's just keeping it simple.
Yeah.
I mean, there are backwards and forwards, I know that, and that's what you've tried to summarise here, but at the end of the day, end on heart.
That was a really good question and comment that you raised, because not everybody is financially literate. So at the end of the day, you just want to know, are we healthy? And going off our financial position at this point in time, at 30 June, yes, we are.
I was just going to add a further comment to that. Just looking at the financial position, our assets have increased. Our net equity has increased from 23 to 24. That's also a good sign.
All right.
Your Worship, I can't resist adding to it. The other element that we don't tend to see clearly in your financial position is what we call the funding element that sits behind it. And I think if I look at our depreciation reserves and I find that it's a net increase, that means what we are rating for and putting into the reserve and what we're spending in the renewals, it's in a positive way. If we find it moving in the opposite direction, that means we could be in trouble in later years. The other thing I think is just us to be aware of is that even though, for example, the explanation on the page refers to say that our total borrowing it's lower than planned, I guess we just got to be careful whether that borrowing is deferred to subsequent years. So though it looks like, you know, our overall debt at year end is lower than planned, is it deferred? Is it deferred borrowing that we're looking at? So that's the other thing. And that's why the team it's never lose a sleepless night and looking at that headroom. That's important. So I think though it's positive, but we just got to make sure that it is not something that's going to come back and bite us. That's why the funding element, which is not clearly explained, the statements that the finance team look at as well.
Thank you. Are there any final questions, councillors? Okay.
I was just looking at the on page. What just surprised me, I was looking at page 51. It talked about the main things on water, and I see that the achievement is that we use 378 litres of drinking water per. That was incredibly higher than all the things we've discussed over the last year with various reports that it's hard to get this figure right. That might be the more likely to be a right figure with actual uses, which we've talked 250 and 270 per ratepayer, but this might be the right figure with water losses and things, I don't know. But not really asking a question, because it's probably better to scare the heck out of people. And when we head out to the great new job of water, you know, a lot of water there, isn't it, per head.
There absolutely is, and it's always difficult for us because we have some of those legacy issues with properties that are on water, where they wouldn't have that when they were wanted. So there's different rural properties, and look, some are by easement and right from contracts going back, legal agreements going back before this council was ever formed. So yeah, very hard. But when you look at what Kapiti and Horowhenua use in comparison to what the Tararua District Council use, it's like 150 litres per person difference.
The difference here though was the last couple of years, I've done 2 cents there, but I did see some annual reports just last year, Dazzle's browsing it. The figures were significantly higher than 370. Other councils up in the 450, 450 to 460. Last 2 years.
Raj, I'd be keen to know who's 450. Wow.
You know, I can see. I'm sure, but the last year there were 250, so. But probably better monitoring.
Sorry, through your words, I'm going to jump in before Raj chats. The 378 is what the actual result was for 23. The 24 result was 358, so there is a slight decrease.
The infographic I have not yet updated. My apologies.
Again, one of the notes or one of the disclosures that sometimes we don't look at, it's if I draw attention to page 246, note 36. This is quite important for us. We talk about risk management. This is where we disclose any potential contingent asset or liability, and mainly a liability to council. I think it's quite important that I draw attention to that, just to be aware of, because this is where what we're saying to the community and through the auditors, that these are potential costs that is not in our balance sheet, that is not in our P&L, that potentially could impact us. So it's quite important for us to just I think it's quite important for me to draw your attention to that.
Thanks for that, Raj. No one had any questions on that. Okay. Right, councillors, there's a recommendation on page 3 of the agenda. We'll just signal. So 1.1, the report from the senior financial accountant dated the 27th of September concerning the draft annual report for the year ending 30 June be received. 1.2, that the Tararua District Council received the draft annual report for the year ended 30 June 2024. And 1.3, that the Mayor and Chief Executive be delegated authority to make minor changes requested by Audit New Zealand and to sign the statement of compliance and responsibility that's contained within the annual report ended 30th of June. I do have a couple of mine alts just for little. Yeah. Happy to move that, Councillor Long. Seconded. Councillor Peter Weber. All those in favour, please say aye. Very much for the hard work that you've all been putting in, especially in Wayne.
And I'll ask a question when this is.
Okay. Right, thank you, councillors, for your attendance today, and we will break for lunch. Was it?